Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the course of Survey of Major English-Speaking Countries. This lecture is about the general introduction of Australia, Part 2. The Commonwealth of Australia, formed in 1901, is comprised of 6 states and 2 mainland territories. These 6 states are New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania. The 2 territories are the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory. The Commonwealth of Australia is a constitutional monarchy, a federation, and a parliamentary democracy. The King or the Queen of Great Britain is the head of Australia, normally represented by the Governor-General. Australia's system of government reflects both the British and the North American models, but with some unique Australian features. In terms of its government system, Australia follows the federation model of the United States. The federal government has a 3-tier system. The federal government at the national level, governments at the state and the territory level, and local governments at the cities, towns, municipal level. The federal government is based on a popularly elected parliament with 2 chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The party or group parties with a majority in the House of Representatives forms the government, with ministers appointed from both chambers to serve in the cabinet. The Australian Constitution deals with the composition of the Australian federal government, the powers of the government, and the relation between the federal government and the state government. The Australian Constitution can be changed only by referendum. Formal changes to the Constitution must be approved by a majority of voters in at least 4 out of the 6 states, and an overall national majority of voters. The division of powers between the federal government and the state government is defined in the Constitution. The powers exercised by the federal parliament and government includes the responsibility for foreign relations and trade, defense and immigration, while the governments of states and territories are responsible for all the matters not assigned to the Commonwealth. The Parliament of the Commonwealth is the federal legislature of Australia. The Australia Parliament consists of the Queen and the 2 houses, the Senate, also called the Upper House, and the House of Representatives, also called the Lower House. On the principle of separation of powers, the Parliament makes laws and provides legislative work for the operations of the other 2 arms of government. The Senate consists of 76 senators, 12 from each of the 6 states, and 2 from each of the mainland territories. The Senate has virtually equal power to make laws with the House of Representatives. The Senate has a highly developed committee system, which enables senators to inquire into policy issues in depth and to scrutinize the way laws and policies are administered by the ministers and civil servants. The House of Representatives has 150 members, each representing an electoral division. Members are elected for a term of up to 3 years. The central function of the House of Representatives is the consideration and the passing of new laws and amendments or changes to existing laws. Another function is to determine the government. Therefore, it is also called the House of Government. After an election, the political party or party group with majority support in the House of Representatives forms the governing party, with its leader becoming Prime Minister. The House of Representatives is also involved in such responsibilities as publicizing and scrutinizing the government administration, controlling the government expenditure. Most Australians are of British and Irish ancestry, and the majority live in urban areas. The population has more than doubled since the Second World War, spurred by an ambitious post-war immigration program. The population of Australia is about 25.6 million in 2020. The indigenous population, the Australian Aborigines, estimated 300,000 at the time of the European arrival, numbered 670,000 in 2020. Though still more rural than the general population, the Aboriginal population has become more urbanized, with 1/3 of them living in the major cities. Australia is the most sparsely populated of the inhabited continent. In terms of the landmass, Australia is the 6th largest nation in the world. However, it ranked 53rd in terms of population, with an overall population density of about 3 people per square kilometers. Home to people from more than 200 countries, Australia has an enviable international reputation for diversity and tolerance. Australia accepts and respects the right of all Australians to express and share their individual cultural heritage. Cultural diversity has become a touchstone of its national identity. Multiculturalism as a policy was adopted in Australia in the 1970s. Australia, like Canada and the United States, is considered a traditional country of immigration. Migrants from culturally and linguistically different backgrounds constitute a diverse Australian population. 3 major contributors to Australia's diverse population are the indigenous peoples, the British colonial past, and extensive immigration from different countries and cultures. Despite the fact that the indigenous Australians have inhabited Australia for at least 50,000 years, they make up only about 2.5% of the total population of Australia. The overwhelming majority are immigrants and their descendants. Over half of these immigrants are from Europe, predominantly Britain. In recent years, there has been a new trend of immigration from New Zealand, India, and Vietnam. Over 2/3 of Australian population live in big cities. The major urban centres of Australia include Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, and Darwin. Canberra is the capital city of Australia and is located in the Australian Capital Territory. The name Canberra originally means the meeting place in the Aboriginal language. Canberra houses many breathtaking landmarks and heritage buildings, such as Parliamentary House, the High Court of Australia, and the National Museum of Australia. It is also the location of many social and cultural institutions of national significance, such as the Australian War Memorial, Australian National University, Australian Institute of Sport, National Gallery, National Museum, and the National Library. The site of Canberra was selected for the location of the nation's capital in 1908 as a compromise between rivals Sydney and Melbourne, the Australians' two largest cities. The city of Canberra, like Washington, D.C. in the United States, is independent of any state to prevent any one state from gaining an advantage by hosting the seat of federal power. It is usually among Australian cities, being an entirely planned city outside of any state, similar to the American Federal District of Columbia. Unlike Washington, however, Canberra has its own independent legislative assembly and government, similar to the states. Sydney is the capital city of New South Wales and is Australia's largest and oldest city. Sydney has a population of over 4.5 million, and most of them live in the suburbs. About 200 years ago, this place was a wasteland. After 2 centuries of hard exploration and development, it has become one of Australia's most prosperous, the modernized, the internationalized city. Greater Sydney includes a very diverse ethnic mix, resulting in some great dining and cultural variations. It is also home to a great deal of Australia's historical sites, wildlife parks, great beaches, waterways, and national parks. The Sydney Opera House, one of the most distinctive buildings of the city, is also the most famous world's performing arts centers in the world. It is one of the great iconic buildings of the 20th century, an image of great beauty that has become known throughout the world, a symbol for not only a city, but also a country and the continent. The Opera House was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site on 28 June 2007. The Sydney Opera House is situated on Bennelong Point in Sydney Harbour, close to the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It is 185 meters long and 120 meters wide, including 1,000 rooms. It has an annual audience of 2 million for its performances. Contrary to the implication of the name, it houses a multi-venue performing arts center rather than a single opera theater, as well as hosting many touring productions in a variety of performances. The Sydney Opera House is a major presenting venue for Opera Australia, the Australian Ballet, and the Sydney Symphony. The Sydney Harbour Bridge is the main crossing of Sydney Harbour, carrying vehicular, rail, and pedestrian traffic between the Sydney Central Business District and the North Shore. The dramatic water vista of the bridge, together with the nearby Sydney Opera House, is an iconic image of both Sydney and Australia. The bridge was the city's tallest structure until 1967. According to the statistics, it is the widest long-span bridge in the world, and is the largest steel arch bridge, with the top of the bridge standing 134 meters above the harbour. Another famous tourist attraction destination in Sydney is the Darling Harbour. It is now one of the most internationally well-known and popular attractions in Australia, which hosts more than 28 million visitors each year. Since 1988, the harbour has grown into a must-see destination featuring a wide variety of restaurants, bars, cafes and shops, as well as a huge entertainment and exhibition centre. Harbourside's mix of shops, restaurants, retailers, entertainment outlets, bars, convenience stores, combined with its beautiful waterfront setting, makes it a great charming to the people travel to the city. Tasty burgers, top quality seafood, fired pizzas, and the traditional pies that are just some of the edible delights available at the Darling Harbour. If you'd prefer a liquid refreshment, then there's freshly squeezed juices, local and imported beers, and some excellent views from the bars situated on the waterfront at the harbour side. The unique attractions at Darling Harbour include two of Australia's leading museums, the National Maritime Museum and the Powerhouse Museum. The Sydney Aquarium, the world's largest movie screen, and the indoor theme park are also situated at the Darling Harbour. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.